we're just waiting for a couple more people to get here.
Christina, hey Ziad, hey Abdullah. Long time no see. Yeah.
So nice to meet you, the rest of the speakers.
Hello.
Okay, so we have
Hello.
people joining both on the Meet and on the stream, so that's interesting. Okay, it's 7:02, so I guess we can start. First of all, thank you guys so much for showing up to this. Thank you. We're really excited to have you, and I'm sure this is going to be super beneficial for everyone. Before we begin, I just want to go through like a couple slides just about the DST in general and what we do, and basically, you know, how everything goes. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. So really people we admire and people who inspire us. So a bunch of startup founders who have, you know, founded their startups from like the ground up and have really gotten places. So you'll get to know them soon enough. So I won't be really doing any introductions. So before I begin, just something that we have to highlight is we have a zero tolerance policy for harassment of any kind. So please refrain from harassing anyone or discriminating against other people. Google is very serious about this, and we definitely support this message. So as a DSC, so who are we? So some of you might already know us, some of you probably don't. Our goal is basically to create impact in universities. So we're part of Google's mission in general to create impact. So basically what we do is we are chapters inside universities. So this is the LAU chapter. And what we do is we impact students by giving them, you know, the tools they need to really make a difference in their careers. So, you know, we want to basically bridge the gap between theory and practice for student developers. And that's really what this event is all about. So we're here, we're bringing you so many people who really have seen the real world and everything there. So yeah, let's get started. That's really it from my end. So I'm gonna let you guys introduce yourselves and see. So let's get started. Does anyone want to start? So we can go through like any order. It doesn't matter.
Let's do alphabetically.
Okay. Okay.
Doesn't work for me. Okay, I'll start. So is this in English or Arabic, by the way?
Let's try to stick to English. Like I think Christina, you know, she should be more comfortable with English, I think.
Okay. Let's do English. So my name is Abdullah. I'm currently actually working with LinkedIn. But being here, I was a co-founder of some previous startups. So one of them you might know more is called Zoomal, which is the leading crowdfunding platform in the Arab world. And later on, I co-founded GivingLoop.org, which is a platform that helps nonprofits raise sustainable monthly donations online. Currently, we're supporting a lot of great Lebanese nonprofits, especially during the pandemic and the economic shutdown. So Live Love Lebanon is on our platform. For example, they're raising $12,000 a month. We have a few nonprofits also raising some good money. So we're very proud of this work. Who's next?
I guess that's me with the C.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much, you guys, for having me here. Lebanon has a special place in my heart, and you'll find out why. But I'm Christina Rebel. I'm co-founder as well as Chief Innovation Officer at Wikifactory. Wikifactory wasn't my first startup. You'll find out more. But it's the one that I've been persistently trying to do my best in for the last 7 years. And I think we have maybe 10 years still ahead. It's a long journey, and it's a platform that where designers, engineers, and product innovators can collaborate together online, kind of like a GitHub for product innovators, seeing that share files, CAD files can be shared online, and now increasingly those files could actually be sent to be produced anywhere with where you find a 3D printer or a CNC mill. We think that this is the way that the future of production and the future of product design is heading. So we're riding on that transformative trend. Thanks.
Okay, last character of the alphabet. My name is Ziad. I'm the founder of Spike. I've worked previously in many startups, mostly alongside with Abdullah. It's been like 8 years now of working in startups and founding them. What I currently work on is in healthcare. It's called Spike. It's an app that helps diabetics on a day-to-day basis adhere better to their medication, and it creates a better link between them and their doctors, their family, the people who care about them. It's been going since 2017. Lots of things happened since then, and I'm looking forward to sharing most of it with you.
Noor is here as well. Hey, Noor.
Hello.
Just in time to introduce yourself, and Untitled Chapter.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Apologies for the delay. So my name is Noor Arterisi. It's good to see everyone here. It's been a while. Basically, I studied food science, but then after a few years of being in the field, mostly on the academic side, my career kind of took a turn and got into the startup and the tech life, where I started with Zumal. And then soon after, I basically, with Ziad, started Teens Who Code. It was kind of like a mixed chronological timetable, like it started before, but then it materialized later on after trying different things and failing. And basically, Teens Who Code is a summer academy for teenagers, as the name implies, those who are between the ages of 12 to 18 years old. It's a physical summer camp where they come in for a month to the location in Beirut, and they choose the courses that they like, just like at university. There are lists of courses. They choose what they want from, I don't know, web development, cybersecurity, game development, etc. And at the same time, they participate in different sports like parkour, biking, self-defense, and visit companies, accelerators, corporate startups. And at the end of the program, they participate in a one-day startup competition with MIT Enterprise Forum for them to practice how to create a company in case one day somebody wants to go that route, to at least have an idea of how to start.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for introducing yourselves. It's really a pleasure to have all of you here. Okay, so, really what we really want to get out of this event is really, an idea about your entrepreneurial journeys, as well as, the process, the total experience, and whatever you'd like to throw in. So whatever you think is relevant, you probably know better than me. So I will be moderating this panel sort of with my co-moderator, who's Hamad. You can see him right there. He's part of the DSC core team, so we'll be doing this. And we also have some questions that people sent in advance that they'd like to ask you guys. So what I suggest is let's really hear more about the companies themselves, about the journey, and then we'll take the questions and see what discussions come up. So whoever would like to start, like a more in-depth, we could say, introduction.
I think
is there a particular
let's
question?
probably okay, so let's probably start with Abdullah, since like we've seen Ziad and Noor, they both worked at Zumal. which is a startup that Abdullah founded. So let's.
I was doing this internship with the Middle East Venture Partners. I think it was the story, and everything that we've actually learned as well from Zumal was helped us in coming up with Giving Group, which also Noor and Ziad were the co-founders initially, and that was also the experience from Zumal helped a lot to pivot into a better application, which we believe has more sustainability and growth potential. Is that enough for you, Mdalal?
Yes, it is enough. Fun fact, in case you guys don't know, basically back in 2016, my first job was actually at Zumal, and I've been hired by Abdullah Absi as a web developer and a web designer, and it's really great to see him here again and in a discussion panel here at LAU. So it feels great to have you right here. So thank you.
Thanks, Mdalal. I remember the Rubik Cube days and the football. Yeah,
fun times. So let's maybe go to Christina now. Can you tell us more about, please, the Wikifactory, how it started as well? Where did the idea come from? And just all the juice of the story, please.
And just to say that I completely resonate with what you're saying, Abdullah, of wanting to really empower people, because I feel like, at least in my journey, not least in my journey, but for all of us co-founders at Wikifactory, I think that was the original stem that we were born out of as well. I guess our tools were different at the time. So Wikifactory emerged when we were based in London, in a co-working space called Impact Hub. Maybe you guys have heard of the Impact Hub network. It was actually the first ever co-working space network before WeWork, before Google Campus. And so my colleague was this first CTO of this Impact Hub network, and I met him there. And actually, I must start the story with him because it's the funny part. Because at the time, I'd been following an entrepreneurial path in London for many years, actually. And it was meeting my now co-founder at this co-working space at Impact Hub, where I was doing a different project at the time, and it was actually an event, it was an entrepreneurial event, and I pitched him my first tech startup, and I wanted him to be the CTO of that startup, and he absolutely loved the idea, but turned around and said, but we're coding it together. And at the time, I have to really say that I tried to learn all the skills that you need to start your own business, but the one area I hadn't quite crossed into was coding. And I'm so glad that he prompted that, because on the one hand, well, I think anyone who learns how to code is so humbled by how much has been shared online in terms of how many resources, online knowledge, open libraries, games for you to learn how to code whatever, in whatever language, that I was so astonished by just, on the one hand, how persuasive open source software as a methodology had been. Because granted, I was in a buzz in London, which was like at the height of the startup scene. You know, I was there when the first Google campus in the world was started, and I was in this Silicon Roundabout, it was called, trying to be like Silicon Valley of London. And there was a lot of energy towards entrepreneurship, but it kind of reinvented the wheel of competition, of in effect, you know, privatizing solutions. And what I noticed when I learned about open software innovation, I was just so surprised how much it was the dominant way, the dominant methodology of rolling out new solutions. That actually open source software had won the market. That there was no a single company in this world that didn't run their programs on open source software. That it led for more robust software, for more scalable software, and that totally blew my mind. So I was so grateful for open source software. I'm saying that term so many times. And that's thanks to my co-founder. And coincidentally, in this co-working space that we're part at the time, there were some cool startups that were emerging that was trying to like use the same agile methodology that we see in software, but in hardware. You know, indeed, at the time, it's like the hype of 3D printing. So everyone thought we were going to have 3D printers like microwaves in our houses. And whilst that was a bit over the top, indeed, there were like increasingly maker spaces and fab labs around the world and really cool innovations that, you know, not another Yoda head that we were seeing in Thingiverse, but things that were actually quite complex. And actually in our very own space, we had the chance of seeing some of these new product innovations that were doing things differently fundamentally. Doing things differently because we were using 3D printers, but also collaborating very differently in this kind of open and agile way. Namely, these two projects were Wikihouse. So it's like an open source house design that was developed in SketchUp, where the design first started shared in London, and then some people over in New Zealand took the house and made it earthquake resistant to build rapid homes when an earthquake hit, and made it so that it would be like easy builds with, you know, it was really cool. Like these 3D files could be converted into cutting files that the CNC machines would be able to automate and create IKEA kits of homes. And suddenly, from just these two collaborating, there was like 40 chapters around the world just taking the designs and adapting it to local needs, which was really cool. And then we also saw this in furniture. We saw in prosthetic design. So I think you've all heard of the story of the 3D printed prosthetic that's locally made in your fab lab for it's possible for engineers to work together online. Because of course we can share 3D files and CAD files and view them online. You know, it's kind of like prior to YouTube, we knew that video was going to be able to be shared online. It was just who's going to build the infrastructure for it, right? So that's the ambition that we embarked on 7 years ago. Now it's 7 years past. How far have we gone based on our original ambition? Maybe 10% of the way. And it's huge in terms of like the real ambition and scale of the project. So I think, how have we been able to sustain it on actually building just 10% of what we wanted to build so far? I think my key message to all of you is, you know, we've been really lucky where we earned a fourth veto when randomly I sent my presentation, the first Wikifactory presentation, randomly to a contact, and he sent it over to a colleague over in China, and he messaged back saying, I just wrote a book called The Ethical Economy, and the whole chapter of production is basically what you guys are building. And we were so aligned, and he was a lot older than us. So Nikolai, our fourth veto, was and a lot more experience. So he was quite bullish in pursuing an investment strategy that wasn't about whether we would qualify VC or angel investment needs, but actually a value game based on the why or the what we were building, the vision of the future of production, where fundamentally, if we can just do anything of what open source software or GitHub has enabled for open source software in hardware, that would mean that anyone with a hardware, with a laptop and an internet connection could start up a product company from anywhere, literally, and produce anything. that's a future that we're aiming towards. And pursuing the value game is an interesting one. I think actually investors, like our public, want to be inspired. So if you are confident in the vision that you're setting and that this is a trend that is going to happen, whether it's you or whether it's someone else, that you want to be at the center of it, there will be investors that buy into that story. And you might not be pushed to, I don't know, the KPI might not be MRR, but rather how are you furthering social impact and the vision and the change that you are promising to enable. That's me.
Thank you so much, Christina. That's honestly that was wonderful. Thank you so much. If you want, I can also, so you shared with me a video about Wikifactory. I can play that now or whenever you think that would be good. So whatever you want. Yeah.
Thumbs
All
up.
right.
All
right.
Shukran Jazaid, by the way.
Yeah, and it's really inspirational and great to hear that you took the initiative to build that infrastructure for hardware, because there is a total lack of infrastructure for hardware, to be honest, and it's really nice to hear that now there is. So that's awesome, and kudos to you.
I'm so humble.
The image of a global community.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no. Okay, I'll play it now.
Community of creatives sharing their ideas online tells the story of people designing and making products today. A global community of designers, engineers, fabricators that's growing around the world. Join the global community on Wikifactory. Working in design studios, startups, fab labs, makerspaces, in schools, universities, and libraries, in major cities to the middle of nowhere. With just a simple set of digital fabrication tools and a laptop, they are making telescopes to drones, educational robots to furniture, medical devices to farming kits. Learn from hundreds of projects that, thanks to their creators, are complete with all the files and documentation for you to get started. Get recognized for your expertise. Put your knowledge and skills to practice in projects with a social and environmental impact. Build a community around your new product that can help you accelerate. You can get involved today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing this with us.
Thank you, guys.
We love your vision. We love the mission of the company. This is something that we believe in. You know, our club, we also strive to make knowledge available for everyone. And, you know, collaboration always, you know, is part of the essence of our club in general. So we really believe in what you're doing. All right. So I guess we'll move to Noor. So if you want to talk about your company, your journey. All right.
Okay, so like I said earlier, I studied food science also at EUB, and during my 3 years of undergraduate, I never heard of the word entrepreneurship, although I took maybe 5 business courses between accounting, management, marketing, and that was very weird. The only time I heard of the word entrepreneurship was maybe 2 or 3 years later. I also did a master's degree, by the way, in food science. But after 3 years, I heard it in a co-working space. And that's the importance of co-working spaces. Just like you met your co-founder at a co-working space, I also met Ziad. Back then, it was called Alt City. And I used to go there to just study, prepare for my courses. At the time, I had a part-time job. I was a food science instructor at university. But I really liked the vibe and the kind of people you would find there. It's different than the people at Starbucks or any other cafe, which is like-minded people. And to me, that was a new experience that I never been through before. So I just found myself going repeatedly there, and then being very fascinated with what Ziad does because he's a developer. And I'm like, wow, you could just like write lines of codes and then you can create something. So this kind of like tapped into the creator in me. And I, unfortunately, I was never introduced to software development previously, even when we did multiple orientations before joining university. And maybe if I go back in time, I would study computer science. So he's like, I was like, okay, can you please teach me? So we did a few sessions together. He gave me some sources and he's like, go learn by yourself. And I started, but there was a learning curve. I was like 24 at the time, which is not young to learn a new language. How about coding? So when I was learning, I thought to myself, this is going to take a lot of effort, but this is very powerful. And even if I end up becoming a developer, what I can build or create might not necessarily be, I don't know, helpful or the next big thing, or I don't know how successful I'm going to be in this new endeavor. So what if I put the same amount of effort into teaching other people how to code, because this it's such a powerful tool that allows any person wherever they are in life to be even advanced even further, you know. And I also noticed lots of people around me, like Ziyad, like Abdullah, like Mudallal, and other people that I found out on the internet. They started their coding journey very, very early. And the earlier you start, the faster you are at grasping this skill, and it will direct you into a better future. Maybe building a company, maybe getting into the tech world, because this is the future. And that was back in 2014. So Ziad and I ran a workshop at the co-working space called Learn to Code. And it was among other workshops that I was organizing just for fun. And we noticed that a lot of people came, and of different ages. There were people who were 13, 18, there were graphic designers, there were lawyers, people who are in their 40s, 50s. And I was like, wow, what is this interest in coding? So I went on and did further research, and I saw that in the UK, it was started to become mandatory to study coding at university, at school until the age of 16. And I figured that in Lebanon, it's going to take us at least 20 years to follow the lead of such countries. And I was like, okay, then let me do something, a personal effort, personal initiative, in order to educate, at least start with the Lebanese people, and then see if the government ever implements it or not. And this is how Ziad and I started Teens Who Code. He was, of course, taking care of all of the technical stuff, the technical curriculums, and I was doing the business side. And for someone who did not study business, there was a lot that I had to learn formally and by trial and error. And we tried a lot of things that didn't work out. And I remember the first event that we did, nobody showed up. Like, we had a space reserve, we had banners that we printed, and I still have a picture of that empty space. And it kind of reminds me of when they tell you, you gotta keep trying, you know? And at the time, it was very, very frustrating, but it was our first real indication that we needed to pivot from what we were doing. And it was the first maybe market insight, and that surveys don't really work for me. That's my personal opinion, because we asked a lot of parents and students and teachers, like, do you want to teach kids how to code? Like, yeah, everybody was interested. And we thought that we were going to have a full class the first time. So the first insight we got from the market is that people who can afford this as an extracurricular already are in extracurriculars. They have tutors, they have music, they have sports, they have birthdays, they want to go out. There's no time to fit this within their schedule. And that took us maybe a year and a half, because it wasn't a full-time thing. It wasn't generating money. I still had my job. Ziad had his job. So after that, we decided to pause and then do different things. And that was summer 2015, where I don't usually teach in the summer. I went to Silicon Valley and I attended Draper University program, where it's kind of like an entrepreneurship boot camp, where they teach you a little bit of everything in 6 or 7 weeks. And this is where I started having more knowledge about startups, and I wanted to see what it's actually like in Silicon Valley. Is it this like dream that everybody talks about? Is it very different than what we have here in Lebanon? Do they have crazier ideas, better ideas? And I figured that it's all the same everywhere. And I believe in the saying that Silicon Valley is a state of mind, and it's not an actual geographical location. up to a certain point, because sometimes being in a certain location sometimes limits your growth. But to start, you can do it from anywhere. Um, After that, Ziad went on and did other things, and I decided to create a format that is a summer format instead of a winter format. And this is where the first successful attempt for the Teens Who Could Summer Camp was. It was in summer 2016. I was lucky to have a very supportive partner, the Beirut Digital District, which is a business cluster of like 10 buildings, where it's kind of like the Silicon Valley of Lebanon. It's like super, super tiny. And it was the campus where the students would come, do the courses, the sports, and everything that I explained. I was also working in Zumal at the time, and I was also lucky to be working with Abdullah, who was supportive to that. And I made a deal with him. I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm trying this thing. I want to do it for a month. And I remember I used to finish at like 3 or 4, and then go to the Zumal office and keep working. And that he trusted me that I was going to do the work and not leave after everybody left. So that was cool. And the summer camp ended. I forgot about it. Continued working with Ziad and Abdullah in Zumal. We worked on Giving Loop, which is an online platform for recurrent fundings and donations for NGOs from their supporters. But then maybe 6 or 8 months in, I figured that if I don't build on the momentum that I created, it was going to be gone. And I had to make a choice. And it was the toughest decision that I had to make, because I was having such a good time at Zumal. I was learning a lot. I was enjoying the time there. And I had to just make that leap of faith, that jump. I did jump, and with no backup, no proof that this is going to work again, because the first year I just broke even. It's not like it was something profitable or anything. I only had 15 students. So the next summer of 2017, I worked for a couple of months by myself, couldn't afford to hire anybody. And I had 50 students. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is working. I got 50 families who don't even know me to trust me with their children. Obviously, there's something of value. And this is when I felt and witnessed for the first time the product market fit, or the service market fit. People are paying for something that they find valuable. And from there, it was just history. I joined an accelerator. I tried doing something online. It didn't work. But the summer camp kept growing up until last year in 2019, where we had 120 students. But due to COVID, we had to pause this year. And then I don't know what the future holds.
That deserves an applause. Thank you so much for sharing this, and it's really inspirational to have you here. So in case you guys didn't notice, 2 out of 4 startup founders here are women, and I think that's really awesome. For some reason, we don't have that many women in the tech sector, but seeing you guys empowering other women, and it's really inspirational, especially you, Noor, that you're basically building a summer camp for teenagers, no matter the gender or the age or the race, and that's really awesome. That's inspiration, and that is the future, I guess. So thank you for that. So let's go with Ziad. I may be a bit biased. Ziad is actually my mentor, and I'm actually working at Spike now as a design consultant. It's been 3 years that I'm working with Spike, and probably one of the best experiences I've had in my entire life. So so let's talk to Ziad a little bit.
Well, thank you for being with Spike. You've been such a great member with us, so much value added, and I'll talk later, maybe touch down a bit on your experience with us, and how you changed us, and how maybe we've helped. But to start, my experience is mostly technical. Started off loving to code, learned about it while I was learning how to install curtains at houses through the son of my boss. And when I would sit at the store waiting for customers to come in, I would read about it, learn about it, and kind of fell in love with it. Went to university, studied computer science, didn't go through with it. And along that road, I met some great people, some people who changed my life, introduced new things, and the first moment of those was when I learned when someone introduced me to computer science. That was the first moment. Changed my life. Second moment was when I met Abdullah, and we kind of talked about starting a company, working with him on Zumal, um, helping others understand that there is a path for you that's different than just finding a job and working there. If you feel this urge to start something, then maybe you should do it. Um, and what do I know? I was like 19 years old, still young and foolish. Still am, but yeah. Um, so yeah, that was when I started working with Abdullah on Zumal. Um, I wasn't doing any technical work back then, which was interesting because that gave me a way to start thinking of business rather than the technical skills that I had. And with time, I grew to combine those two skills, and try to build stuff. Many of them have failed. Tried to do AI too early. That's when I directly left Zuma. Then met Noor. Tried to do education, uh, and then I kept on searching for something that would really mean to me. Um, Ended up working with Muhammad a couple of times on freelance projects, and one of the last freelance projects we worked on together um, was something related to chatbots. And during that time, we built something for someone, a chatbot, and it didn't really end up working, but we had some capital from that person. And he really valued talent and people who could do technical skills. So I had, you could say, some money and some time on my hand, and it was for the first time. Like, I think I have good money to sit and think and really, what do I want to do? I could use the money to travel or just sit around, and that's when I thought of the problems I have. And one of the problems I have is diabetes. It's a disease that um, that it's two types. So I have type 1 diabetes that comes at a young age, and it stops the person's pancreas from handling sugar inside of the body or producing insulin. So I have to take it through needles. Um, and that was really the pain. And you had to manage it a lot. So you had to do the work instead of your pancreas. You had to figure out when to take your insulin shots, how to take them. You had to keep that in mind, log them, so many things to do. And I'm a very forgetful person sometimes. And there's this coffee shop that I would always go to. And every time I went, I would get so distracted that I would eat and forget to take my medication. So I thought, like, I should build something to remind me at that coffee shop to take my medicine. And that's how Spike started. That idea kind of got a couple of people interested. I thought there's something there that could make sense. Um, Thought more of it, applied to an accelerator, got into two accelerators at the same time in Lebanon, Speed and Souk, which closed. But yeah, so yeah, got into two accelerators and started working more on the idea. It moved into hardware for some time. So we wanted to build a device for the insulin pen so that we could better track insulin consumption. But building hardware isn't easy, as you mentioned. And we noticed that the software we've created um, was was interesting for people because it didn't require any interference from them. What the app would do is it would look out for the user and detect when they might be having a meal or when they might be exposed to food. And based on it, it would give them food suggestions or insulin reminders depending on what situation they're in, if they're out for dinner, out with friends, staying at home. So we call it situational analysis, and it really doesn't require anything from the user besides downloading the app and signing up. And and that's how it started. So I joined the accelerator in end of November, early December. It was a 3-month program. At the end of the program, got selected to go to Black Box in San Francisco, where I met great people, gave me great insight. And when I came back, I pitched at something called the Seed Boost, which is an opportunity for 5 investors to invest in you, and won that. Um, After that, I went on a spree of competitions trying to collect capital so that I could afford the day-to-day expenses of running a startup. We won lots of competitions, the largest being the Tritex Championship in Dubai, which was $100,000. And right now we have users using, like, diabetics all around the world using it, mostly in UK, Germany, the US, and it's been a very personal and uh, uh, interesting mission to think about the psychology of people using their phones to better adhere to their medication and living better with themselves. Um, and that's, like, in a nutshell what the journey, how it started, and where we are now. Thank you for that, Ross.
Awesome. No, yeah, thank you so much. That's really awesome. We're so happy to have you and everyone here. It's really truly inspirational for everyone, I think. So yeah, so I guess we can move on to the like more discussion Q&A part of the thing. So we have some Q&As that were sent in advance, but if someone wants to ask something now, I believe they can just use the chat, or they can, if they're watching from YouTube, they can use the YouTube chat because I have that open, so no problem. All right, so I think the first question that really was asked, and I think will be asked a lot by most people here because almost everyone is a college student, is how can college students start their startup journey? So, like, at what point would a college student really feel ready or start? Uh,
I
so
would
yeah.
say I would say at night is the right time to start your startup. Like, after you've finished your homework, you could use an hour or two to think and maybe do some work. And everyone is free, so you could talk to them and maybe find a partner to help you out. Um, but I would say it's very tempting to start something now, and it's very easy to get sucked into your own ideas and your own word, and create a bubble. Like, people would talk to me, and I would meet so many old people, gray hair people, and they would try to teach me some wisdom or some things that I should consider. And being that young, still at college, I wouldn't really take the advice as they would think, and I would still do things my way or go against the flow. Taught me a lot of things. Definitely still learning from gray hair right now. But I would definitely say it's a great time to experiment, but just remember that if y- take the advice, because most people are really trying to help, and especially if they have experience, then you should make use of their experience and their mistakes rather than just falling into them. um, yeah, I guess those are like 2 cents on starting from college. Abdullah, what's your experience in starting from college?
Um, I think from time-wise, when you're in college, you have a lot of time on your hand that you can basically invest in starting your business. So I remember I used to work all the time in the library. So between classes, I'm like jumping to the library, working from there. Um, it was the open library, not the silent one, or otherwise I would be depressed. Um, but yeah, I think what I would recommend anyone if they want to start um, at least a tech startup while in college is to definitely get into coding, because that will help you, especially at that age, to kind of have the ability to build whatever you have in mind. It's not easy to get other people aligned on what you're thinking, and sometimes you just have to like do this kickstart. Being able to build something yourself rather than rely on others to build for you or find a co-founder, I think is very important. So do this while in college. That would be a great advantage. The second thing is, uh, you're probably going to be like very naive in ideas, and I would like follow on what Ziad was talking about. Like you would be creating your very own bubble of something that like absolutely makes no sense in the real world. And so you want as much as possible to have this mindset of sharing your ideas as much as possible, getting feedback from others, not being afraid that that's like a super stealth idea. I don't want to tell it to anyone because they're gonna steal it. Um, Guess what? Like probably thousands of people have already thought about this idea, and hundreds of them are executing, and probably one or two are surviving, and you might see them on Google. But I can assure you there are thousands of people who thought about this idea at least. And so it's all about the execution. It's all about how you think about those small details. You get feedback. You need insights. That's something I mention usually in my, like I mentioned a few times to entrepreneurs, is you want to find this unfair advantage that you can have for yourself when building a company. And so that you cannot just start a company with an idea that's totally in a space that you do not understand and expect investors to come and join you, right? You want as much as possible. If you're in college, you're still young, you basically have no experience, you don't have much insight about industry, and you probably don't have an experience also running a company and so on. So you want to try to like mitigate all those risks for the investor ahead of time. And so you want to think about, okay, maybe I should have a co-founder. You want to kind of build this relationship early on. You want to learn about different industries as much as possible. If you live in a family that is involved in the fashion industry, you have an edge. If you're living in any industry, whatever environment you're in, just use that to your advantage, because that will give you the insights that could potentially help you in your company. And also you want to think about like, what is that edge that you are creating? Like, is that in some sort of IP or AI or some kind of model that is giving you this technological edge? You want as much as possible to make it hard for others to get into your business. So if you can create a monopoly kind of business where you can eat all the market because you have amazing technology, that would definitely help you like attract customers, but also attract investors, because this defensibility makes your business stronger for the future. So yeah, those are some tips starting out from college. It's not easy, and it's probably like you're I don't want to say you're gonna fail. You shouldn't be in the mindset of failing at any point in time if you're starting a company, because you're gonna fail if you put yourself in that mindset. But put yourself in the mindset that 90% of startups fail, and you wanna, as you go through this journey, especially being young and in the beginning, you're more leaning towards the chance of failure. And so you wanna try to keep yourself surrounded with the right mentors and advisors, and getting as much feedback and being very iterative in what you're building.
Great. Thank you.
There's not
Yeah.
a thing that I would not agree with what you both have said. Like such wisdom, even for me. Thank you. Because, I have to say that I resonate on quite a few aspects. It's interesting because I do feel like the startup entrepreneur is a little bit of the new hero. And it's funny because some of the first entrepreneurs I ever met, when they were part of that hype of entrepreneurialism, they would come back to me and say, gosh, the media super simplify my story, huh? It's a lot more difficult that they make it seem. And I have heard accounts of like 12-year-olds coming to me. It's like, yeah, I want to create my new startup, and in 4 years I'll sell it and I'll be rolling. And it's like, yeah, honey, that's not how it's like. And so therefore, my dad used to always say, the road from A to B is always under construction. And therefore, maybe the startup is the goal, but be prepared to be agile. Fundamentally, it's funny. So I studied politics in university, and I didn't quite consider myself to be entrepreneurial at the time. I feel you, Noor. No one told me about entrepreneurialism, but actually, I was already quite entrepreneurial in the problem-solving abilities that I had, the will to really understand things, deconstruct them, lateral thinking, creative thinking. And I feel that, because the road from A to B is a struggle, like let's not shy away from that struggle. Agree with you, Abdullah. It's, 98% or 99% of startups fail. But I heard once in my early start of the journey that actually within that, those that do fail is because the founders give up. And when you're young, you're at the stage where you need to experiment, but you need to experiment in finding your tribe, the team that will ultimately stop you from throwing the towel. In Spanish, there's a saying, tirar la toalla, to give up. And I think I failed in 2 prior startups before Wikifactory. And if I think the only differentiating factor versus Wikifactory in those 2 startups is that I wasn't at it alone. Yes, I was in a co-working space at the time, but I was going at it alone. And it's just too easy to give up. If you tie yourself to people, to your tribe, you just won't give up. And then what you tie yourself in, like what brings you together, has to be more than, the commercial opportunity. It must be that you are trying to solve a real problem in society, whether it's in your locality or in your region or worldwide, because actually, or scaled, distributed, because your solution could be distributed and deployed anywhere where the problem exists. The niche market is approachable these days, thanks to tools like Wikifactory, but not only on Wikifactory, of course. So I think one should first, before saying I want to be, well, first of all, we all have an entrepreneurial spirit. I really do think so. And especially all of you Lebanese, like you guys are one of the most entrepreneurial cultures I know for a fact. So you all have that spirit, but rather than that being your end in mind, the B that you're heading towards, maybe it's the bigger why or the bigger problem that you're trying to solve in society, to the environment, because that's going to ultimately drive you when you are feeling low, where the battle, the struggle can be internal, it can be contextual because you're not getting your finance. Suddenly you don't have offices because of COVID. There's always a struggle. So really looking into the why is the fundamental way that you will persist. And that why has to be shared with others, and ideally a community, because then the community is able to grow on your efforts and actually fuel you. Because it's great to be growing your revenues and so on and all of that, but the stories that will inspire you in your day-to-day is like your story, Ziad. You had an issue you're handling that you had in your own life and you found a way of solving it. That's the kind of profile of people that I want to see emerge in my community and that we're building in Wikifactory. That's what inspires me. Yes, financially sustainable is a means to it, but the why is ultimately what keeps me going day after day.
That's an awesome answer. Thank you.
I think I just want to add something to that on the why. I think people have this glamorous view of entrepreneurship and starting companies. It's like a Hollywood kind of thing. And once you go over it a couple of times, so the first time you might think, okay, maybe I took a wrong turn. Second time, maybe I took a wrong turn. Third time is when you start realizing that this is just maybe harder than anything you've tried. There's this thing I read where they were comparing homework to startups, and in school you could do homework and you could find a way to cheat. You could find a way to copy your answers, something like that. But in startups, there is no way to cheat, because there is no shortcut to life or people's minds or people's hearts or people's pockets. you have to do something really valuable, and that's something you really need to consider. You can't find easy ways in startups, um, but you also need to remember that um, it's a very long marathon. Uh, it's not a race. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon where you tag yourself every time to go through mountains and mud and seas, and then you might end up nowhere, and then you might end up on top of the mountain. So yeah, just that.
Yes, exactly. And personally speaking, having worked with multiple startups, and seeing startups emerging and being launched and being there from day one, actually with Ziad and Spike, uh, you see the struggle firsthand, and seeing how basically Ziad managed to move over that and accomplish the startup spike. It's really inspirational and very motivational actually, because even though the failing rate is probably high, nothing is impossible. And I think these four startup founders here are enough proof for that. So thank you.
Have you guys ever heard of this phrase? It comes from software, that specialization is for insects. Specialization is for insects.
I haven't heard that. What does it mean?
Is this idea that actually specialization is overrated. So, I mean, it's great to fall back on a specialization. But for example, I love your story, Noor, that you came from food tech and then discovered code. I think ultimately I would, if your end in mind is to be entrepreneurial, to ultimately solve a problem in the true sense of the entrepreneurial spirit, at this stage, if you're at university, experiment in terms of learning a broad set of skills that it earns when you're a co-founder in the early days, to be agile, to actually startup companies that start. I don't know about your journeys, but in our case, there would be times where I was doing finance, marketing, the coding, or whatever it actually took to make it happen, granted. And so actually specialization isn't really what we need here. And I think sometimes we don't encourage that enough. In fact, we're still in a cultural mindset where, I mean, I had that, where in fact, I like to learn how to code because it was like a real good hard skill to fall back on, that I knew if I needed to just do some money on the side, I could do a small gig for 5 days a month. This is like where coding is perfect for the entrepreneur in terms of like finding, the first 3 years of Wikifactory, each co-founder kind of maintained themselves by doing some gigs on the side with whatever skills we had. And I'm so glad that I learned how to code, because it would have been much harder for me to maintain myself in those kind of hard days. Because yes, accelerator programs are great. They're so wonderful. But sometimes it's worth developing out the product. If you knew how to code, you could be do some website for a corporate that costs you, that pays you in 5 days for what you need for the month. And for the rest of the month, you do your startup, for example. So it's nice to have a skill. It makes you feel like you're of utility. Sometimes I've been the generalist, the most generalist of all the co-founders, granted. So some of my co-founders over time did take on departments. I think I've been the hard one to pinpoint, and that's just my style, actually. So I'm like the opposite. I'm all pro being generalist. And ultimately, because even if you just learn it a little bit in a startup or any organization for that matter, if you want to manage people, manage skills, manage resources, you need to speak the language of different departments. You need to make sure that information and communications is flowing. So it's not a loss. There's a saying in Spanish, it's not for learning a little bit of everything that it takes up space, and it really doesn't. So if you can learn a little bit about marketing, now you're in a space where you have potential connections with people of any type of specialization. Get to know them, have a chat. Sometimes it just takes a few good chats with someone who's like, I don't know, learning graphic design to find out the latest trends, and that's just enough to actually speak to them at that same level when you might actually need to hire a graphic designer down the line. Those kind of key conversations with breadth of people, which you can do at university, could be the experience you need to build a broader team of many skills in the future.
And you don't have to pay them. That's it's also a very good point to mention.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think this is great advice. I really hope everyone who's attending is, really focusing on that and really taking note of everything. Yeah, so we have like a couple more questions that, we can like continue. But like, I just want to say if anyone, it's like already past an hour and they want to leave, like definitely you can. And thank you so much for everything so far anyways. But yeah, like the next question is sort of related to it. I feel like we can do this one quickly. Like someone's asking, should students invest more in their long-term vision or allocate equal time to studies and goals? So I think basically to rephrase it, like, do I study for my exam or do I go work on my startup? So I don't know. Like you guys can answer that.
That's like too extreme. You have to find a balance.
Yeah.
Like you have to study or you're gonna get in trouble, but you also have to find a way to fulfill yourself and the goals you're after. Um, Maybe you can find common grounds. Yeah, you have to balance.
I kind of did this opportunity cost kind of thing back when I was in college. So I had on one side there was like $75,000 from investors to put in the company that I was doing on the side while in university. And dropping out was definitely one of those like hard choices I had to make. So I wouldn't recommend anyone to go and like just drop out unless you are almost certain that whatever path, the alternative path that you're taking, is kind of this new safety net that you're gonna have. Okay, and for me, I kind of like the getting money in my startup is for me is absolutely a safety net because I'm here kind of building something that obviously investors found interesting that they decided to invest in, and so investing my time in that is more valuable than investing it in studying something that will become irrelevant, right? If I was studying something more related to business or finance, given that I already used to code, uh, I would have found that maybe there's something that I still need to learn there. But I was already coding by the time, and I had to start a company. So now I need to focus more on the generalist skills that I felt like this would require dedication. I cannot anymore study computer science, do a lot of this homework, and at the same time focus on my company. If there's no investment yet, I mean the best thing to do is to do them in parallel, right? So if you're not sure that whatever you're building, you're not yet insane enough about it that you're willing to drop everything and just focus on it, and that is something that is always there, right? I mean, I'm currently working at LinkedIn. I still I'm kind of exploring on the side some projects I want to work on, but I'm still not insanely believing in one particular idea that I'm willing to drop it for that. And so that's something you have to evaluate and get feedback and maybe talk to investors, talk with friends, talk with people who are in the industry, validate your ideas more and more, and that will give you the confidence you need to make basically like harder calls. But if you're, I mean, if you're in college or if you have a job and you're able to balance and basically work with both, to do the study and do the startup, that's a great situation to be in. You don't need to put yourself in any extreme.
I think during that age at university, thinking of consequences beyond 5 years is a very tough thing that uh, I'm not sure how to advise someone on doing, because I couldn't do it. Uh, I, I really thought I would make $1 billion when I decided not to attend that semester, and and I'm still not there. But yeah, it's taking longer than expected. So maybe just think of it like worst
It's
case scenario, it doesn't work out. What are you gonna do without that degree? Can you handle yourself? I'm not saying you can't handle yourself, but it's something you need to consider, because life will be much harder without that degree. Because if you're gonna talk to people, they might ask, and given that you had a couple of failures before, it might hurt you. So can you handle yourself being 27, 28 with a failed startup, and you're looking for something else, but you didn't get that degree? So
It's interesting because when you are, they've proven that up to the age of 25 years old, the part in your brain that stops you from taking risks just doesn't work, and you're like quite daring, and that's the best part, I think, to fuel on. I mean, the fact that you are more risk friendly is fantastic to brew an entrepreneurial kind of lifestyle. It is somewhat like a lifestyle. I mean, if you have the chance of adopting a more entrepreneurial lifestyle already, do so. But the truth is that it's going to, uh, at the end of the day, whether it works out or not is out of your control. So you have to be able to kind of also let go and know that, in effect, that you're not obsessing over it, that you're allowing for changes to actually tell you that it's, one should not head that way, you need to pivot. It really has yet to be earmarked to what it is that you're trying to solve. And that requires a lot of wisdom. It's funny, when I was like 18 to 25, I felt like I was so mature. And it's only now that I'm past my 30, guys, that I recognize that, yes, I was very mature at the time, but I was lacking the real wisdom because I'd only lived so many experiences. And I joke, I look back, because granted, I wasn't going to do an entrepreneurial journey. I don't know if you've heard of that quote, sometimes not getting what you want is a wonderful stroke of luck. So I studied politics, and I mean, أنا أتكلم العربي شوية. I actually started my first modeling agency in Oman. I was doing, I did some talking like in TV at the age of 15. And I think I've always thrown myself in the deep end of doing crazy things. Like the current Sultan of Oman, I interviewed him at 16 years of age for The Economist. So I was always quite, daring, and I wanted to dare to be, to work for the UN. Actually, I'd lived an international life, and I was committed to serving a greater, a cause for humanity, really. I didn't know which one yet, but it was only because of the crisis, and the UN did not have jobs, nor the EU or any institutional body was going to take me. All the university students were, it was far too crowded. And by chance, I found this internship with a crazy eco-entrepreneur, he called himself. And he proved to me that lifestyle was highly attractive. And it's a style that, at the end of the day is also about freedom. Indeed, it's trying to break away from the chains of having to do X, Y, Z, that your path in your life is already set, that you have to do A or you have to do B. And that that comfort that people get from following very clear paths is, I think, something that when you're young, you feel a friction. You want to carve your own path, your own free path, fundamentally, one that, keeps you happy, isn't what your necessarily parents want. And I think not everyone has a chance to enter to kind of feel the entrepreneurial lifestyle. So if you have the chance to even just explore it, I definitely think one should explore it. But then, you know, the journey is under construction. You never know what you might need to do to get you closer to your end in mind. So definitely have a long-term vision. Like, why do you want to, yeah, what ultimately motivates you? But in the short term, be practical with what you have and take full advantage of the learning resources that you have. So if that takes you in the journey of letting go of your course because the learning resources that you get elsewhere is greater, then, you know, that's a good opportunity cost decision that you're making. But fundamentally, I don't think of a better learning experience than the university. So take full advantage of it in your way.
Christine, you said تتكلم العربي and then you didn't say anything in Arabic. You
I
just
know.
said that sentence, basically.
I'll try to practice. So this is literally, if you go to an ATM in Oman, this is what I say. I say, أهلا وسهلا بكم في خدمات في بنك Oman Al Arabi. Welcome to our bank services. It's absolutely hilarious. I know Nancy Ajram by heart. I think you kind of have to if you're friends with Lebanese. I'm not going to sing her, but I did love her. But so my Arabic, I know how to read and write it. I mean, when you live in Oman for 6 years, you kind of have to learn the language, right? But shamefully, I don't get to practice it that much. And in my brain, it competes with Chinese. And when I moved over to China, my Chinese kind of got a lot better and my Arabic faltered. But I'll never forget how to read and write it.
I actually want to shed light on something that Christine mentioned around pivots. I think there's usually this struggle between two extreme different advices that a startup would receive. Like, one, be like very persistent. It's a marathon. It's a 7-year game at least. You have to be like very dedicated and focused and whatever. And then at the same time, you have like this other advice that says like, what is it? Like break like do things with like whatever, hack things and do them quickly and then fail fast.
Move fast and break things.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Neil.
But then they changed it. It became move fast and infra.
Okay.
Take it up with the Zuckerberg.
Yeah, I figured it's not working.
So but that is like, that's very valid, right? The idea that you want to experiment with something before like putting a lot of time into it. You want to test it out, see how users interact with it. If they like it, then you invest further, you pivot from there. But that's kind of like that's a struggle, that's a challenge that every entrepreneur, every founder will have to figure out themselves. Because generally customers would want you to spend more time on this problem, right, to solve it. Investors want you to spend more time. The only person who doesn't want to maybe spend more time is you, and probably not the case, because if you're insane about your idea, you're still going to be dedicated. So sometimes it is actually harder to actually pull the plug than to keep things on, right? So that's something just to consider. Like, yes, put as much time it's for you to realize any returns if you're about like making that $1 billion sometime in the future, Ziad. It's not very straightforward, right? You're just gonna basically keep playing the odds, and at some point maybe you're gonna hit it. But you don't want to be investing 7 years or 10 years or 5 years or even 1 year in a startup that you know is going to fail. Just need to jump quickly to another ship. And so this I think that is important, because otherwise that time that you are spending, you could actually be investing in understanding an industry more. You could be working employed by some company, get to learn about that industry, get some insights that will help you build a better company than being stuck in your own bubble trying to figure things out, right? So think about that when it comes to like your time investment.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the words of wisdom, Abdullah. Before moving on, there's actually something that Abdullah mentioned, and also happened with Ziad that he mentioned as well in Spike. It's about pivoting in the startup. So basically, in Spike, as Ziad said, we've been working on hardware first, and then we've seen that that wasn't working a lot, so we pivoted to software. So sometimes the idea in itself, the fundamentals isn't yeah, and didn't fail, but sometimes the way you're achieving it is what doesn't work. So can you talk a little bit about pivoting in your startup, and if it's too late to pivot, if it's too early, when do you know when the right time it is to pivot to something else while staying in the same idea and the same goals and values that made you start this startup basically?
Um, okay, I could follow up on that on my example. So when we started doing hardware, um, I was I was inexperienced with hardware, and although I saw an opportunity and the market wanted that thing, um, I- at some point you have to realize that uh, although you're playing the odds, but the cards in your hand aren't really that good. So um, because we live sadly in a country that doesn't allow for uh, building hardware, it doesn't make it easy to import electronics. It doesn't make it easy to learn how to become a better hardware engineer. It's not easy to find those people, um, and we're just not a place where we're used to assembly lines and building those kinds of things. Um, so there was a limited amount of money in the bank, and there was a vision, and there were users who were excited for the product and who had access to software and not the hardware yet. And putting all of those together, you have to take a decision on whether do you really want to run out of cash way too quick and not be able to deliver to the market the way you want to deliver, or could you find a way where you could use what you already have and keep that idea of hardware in the back of your mind, everything you worked on, and then maybe make enough money from what you have so that you could reintroduce the hardware and come stronger later. And that that thought is what caused the pivot from being a hardware company to being a software company in our case. And I think it did us well. It did us well. Today I look back and no regrets. We did a good thing, and it's maybe soon enough we'll get back into the hardware game. Noor, you had an interesting pivot from workshops to summer camp.
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, it's the market that tells you when you should pivot. And it's very tough and to differentiate between being persistent and following your vision and not giving up, and between pivoting, because sometimes it feels like a failure. Like, I worked a lot on this thing, I invested a lot of time and money, and we get stuck in this reputation of what defines us as people. We become our startups, and pivoting, even within the same company, might disrupt your identity and who you are. So psychologically, it's not easy to change what you're doing because you got programmed to doing things a certain way. So sometimes you gotta take a step back and change the question that you are asking yourself in order to figure out what is the best way to achieve your goal. So I asked myself, my goal is to teach teenagers how to code. And for a year and a half, I was stuck in the afternoon model, after school model, because I got a lot of advice around that, encouraging me to do that particular thing. So I was like, okay, how can they learn how to code? Is this the only way they can do it? No, there's another way where I could go to school where they already exist. Or when is it that they are free? If they're busy in the afternoon in the winter, they must have more time in the summer. So, and then I also asked myself, okay, who wants to study in the summer? Like nobody. So I created this fun experience that combines learning to code in addition to a lot of attractive things like the sports, like being in a very nice environment where they can meet older people who are already working. It's a community based experience and all the other things that they do not get to experience elsewhere. Like for example, in Lebanon, you know, everybody does football and basketball. Almost every kid does that. So we introduce sports that we don't usually do, like yoga, like parkour, like self-defense. I have a 1 minute video, by the way, that I can show you just to give you a feel of teens who code. So, and when I got my first 15 clients, even though I broke even, it was 15 people I didn't know. It wasn't my family, it wasn't my friends. So the fact that there are people who don't know me paying me for a service that does not exist before. I did not replicate it from another country and brought it to Lebanon. I imagined that it would work like that. And they trusted me with it, especially the first season, like the first 15 parents. I called them the superheroes because they trusted me with their children for a full month to do something that hasn't been proven before. And after that, it was easier to get other parents on board because there are others who have done it in the past. So this was my proof that this was working. And like I said, it was my first product market fit. And every year it just has been growing after that. But then I also got stuck in that when I was trying to build something different, something online. It just like the whole journey all over again, trying to achieve something, getting stuck somewhere and having to ask myself a different question. Unfortunately, that endeavor didn't lead anywhere, at least not yet. But yeah, let me know whenever is a good time to play the video. Maybe once we're done with this question. It's not a bad thing to pivot. Sometimes it might be like we hear a lot of stories about big companies where they started as one thing, they pivoted, and then they became something else. So just be careful of when you should pivot and not call it a give up or a failure.
Perfect. Thank you, and thank you for clarifying that pivoting is not failing, and that's something really important for all the students out here that are really looking forward to starting their own startups, basically. So so I think we went a bit over time. So before we display that video of you of Teams Who Code, let's basically go over one last question that a lot of students have been asking. So basically, a lot of students have been asking about networking tips or how to gain exposure or how to face the challenges that rise up when we're starting a startup. So basically, the big question is there a secret recipe that startup founders do not want to share with others, or what's up with that? So is there a very smooth way to success and to launching a successful startup and or else what?
Sorry, Muhammad, is the question on networking, or
It's basically a chunk of questions that we have been seeing a lot that basically fall into the same category of facing challenges when you're going with a startup, basically, or you're working your way up to launch your own startup. So basically, a lot of startups, especially right now, everybody is making startups, especially here in Beirut, in Silicon Valley, in the UK, in Europe, all around the world. So basically, how to get your startup to where you want it? That's basically the big question.
Okay. Um, I think it's a very big question that you'll need 2 years to go over that answer. But um, what I can say is, um, so you want to start. Let's say you want to start tonight, and you want to make sure you do your best so that it works. You don't have to think about the capital at first because you most probably won't need that capital. Um, you don't have to think about recruiting expensive talent because you're not tapping into your friends' network and your friends themselves. Um, Especially for tech startups, the way I would think about it is you should find a way. It is your job, if you are to get what you want to get, it is your job to find a zero cost way or a minimal cost way to get to a point where you can demonstrate, prototype, or test your idea with a significantly uh, large set of people, if you're in the tech business. And if you could do that challenge, then you are promised with a reward, which is money for your startup, which makes things considerably easier. Uh, and then if you do that right, using that money to get to a better position, you're promised with financial revenues, growing your company. And if you do that right, then you might exit, you might get acquired. But yeah, like you don't need you don't need to have everything figured out. Just figure out how will you get that idea to the most basic form of that idea. You don't have to build it all of it. Like I have a couple of friends in the who are watching, and a couple of them tried to try and still work on launching the whole thing at like one time. Okay, so we're gonna have all of the features ready at one point in time, and we're gonna launch with that. And maybe it would take more time, more effort, more resources to do that, and maybe you don't need all of that to launch. Um, but yeah, so for people just starting, think of that. Um, yeah. Um,
Yeah, and just before we end it, I want to know what Abdullah has to comment on this, especially that Zumal is actually acquired right now. It's been acquired since 2018, I suppose. So that's
Yeah,
a very
right.
big sign of success, and kudos to you. So yeah, tell us what you have to comment on this.
So what I understand from your question is like, what is the road to success, right? I don't know the answer to be honest, but I try to like tell you what I think about the road to success. I think it starts now. Whatever whatever success is to you is you have to be working on it now. You have to be on that journey already, and it really depends on what you're looking for, right? So we've been talking a lot about startups. We've been talking about tech, but if you look at most of the tech companies that are out there, that's really got to extreme success, the way we kind of think about it, the $1 billion kind of success, the unicorn success, the Facebook, the Google, etc. Those are really a very, very, very small percentage of startups that got there, right? And so the chances are that the chances are against you, basically. I mean, you could say, okay, I'm insane. I'm the next Larry Page or Mark Zuckerberg, and you could definitely get there. I mean, whatever you have in your mind, you can just keep on working on it. Be as dedicated as possible. But are you trying to be like Mark Zuckerberg, or do you have like a different image of success in your mind? Is it just that you want to be there because I want to kind of be the person who people call as successful? Am I going there because it's about the money? I need the $1 billion to solve the problems that I want to solve, for example. Um, I think I would really like $1 billion, right? That gives me a lot of room, you know, to build a space company, for example. um, but yeah, it depends on what you define as success. That success could be, that immense success could be that you go and work, you start a sort of nonprofit that is doing the kind of work that you would find extremely impactful, no one else is doing, and it could have some sort of a ripple effect in the community. So it really depends on what you would define as success. For me, what I would define as success is definitely money is out there. So me as an entrepreneur, I think a lot of entrepreneurs would have like different thoughts about this. But for me, I find kind of the path to creating impact in the world is uh, is usually with very wild ideas, and wild ideas are not easily funded. And so I feel like money is always a good path to go to that could lead you to um, uh, funding your own stuff, the things that maybe investors will not fund. But that is a very generic approach, right? I mean, you could go, if I say I'm very interested in, let's say, reforming education, which is something I'm really passionate about, for example, but am I, will I be able to do much about it right now? I don't know. Maybe I could start now, but maybe I could start like, I don't know, a think tank. And I don't really know. I think that having enough resources could get you a lot of places to do what you want, and so that is that could be a riskier, or it's kind of a work in progress, you know. So that's why I said like the road to success is really unknown, because everyone like basically it's not a paved way. You have to like pave it yourself, and you could be paving it in the most stupid ways, or paving the way that like I don't know. There's a lot of bumps on the way, so just be careful and safe ride.
Thank you so much for your insight. So I think Berke, now it's time to show the video of Teams Who Code.
Yeah, and then we can wrap it up. So I think we're done with the questions. And I just want to say thank you so much to all four of you. This has been, you know, beyond our expectations. This was really awesome. And I hope everyone who attended, you know, I'm pretty sure they're going to benefit. I personally did. I'm a student as well, and I did. So yeah, Noor, if you want to share the video, let's go ahead.
Okay. Let me know whenever you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see it.
That was it.
Thank you for sharing the video, and a quick tip for all the attendees that have younger siblings, please consider Teams Who Code. It's a lot of fun. I've seen it firsthand, and no, I was not paid to say this, but please make sure to check that out. It's really awesome.
Yeah, you check out all four of them. You know, like you won't lose. I think that's a good way to go. Okay, thank you so much, guys. Thank you. It was like I've already mentioned, beyond our expectations. Everything was perfect, and I'm sure everyone has really, you know, gotten like an inside look. Um, you know, behind the curtains, behind the scenes. Like you guys were saying how everything is so like depicted in like the not necessarily the most accurate of ways, especially in like movies and the culture and everything. And yeah, now everyone has seen it firsthand. So thank you so much. Big applause to all of you. And yeah, any final comments? Anyone? Yeah, big applause.
The floor is
No.
yours for any final comments.
Thanks for
Well
having
done,
me.
guys.
Good luck
Anybody
for
needs
everyone.
anything, get my email from Mudallal. I'm here to help.
Definitely. Thank you for being here with us, and I guess that's it. We wrap it up.
Yes,
Bye.
for sure.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you, Christina, so much. Okay. All right. Okay, so